Hello and welcome to this module where we are going to discuss the managing of stock in a production or a maintenance environment. In a production environment, we are using raw materials to manufacture goods, whereas in a maintenance environment, we are using spare parts and materials either for renovations or for repairing and maintaining equipment. We want to introduce the concept of bill of materials or bill of quantities. The bill of materials defines how a product is made from its component items. The simplest example being the recipe for a cake. It consists of the different levels showing the quantities of items making each sub-assembly. So in other words, the bill of quantities or bill of materials shows you exactly how we put together different components to come up with sub-assemblies, and then we put together those sub-assemblies to come up with the overall product or the end product. So a bill of materials provides a formula for determining material requirements for making a given quantity of the end product. So if you have got a list of ingredients that go into making one cake, it means if we say to you we want 10 cakes, all you do is you simply multiply the ingredients for the one cake by 10. Because whatever you need for one cake, you are going to need it 10 times. So that is the same thing with a bill of quantities or bill of materials. Once we have the recipe for our end product, we can now place an order for any quantity of that end product, and the system will be able to tell us how much we need of each raw material. The bill of materials are not limited to manufactured products only. They can also be used to define the spare parts required for a standard maintenance job. Let's say, for example, you know that for you to perform the service for a vehicle, you need an air filter, a fuel filter, an oil filter, maybe some plugs. When somebody comes to you and says, I have 10 vehicles that need to be serviced, that bill of quantities for the service job simply needs to be multiplied by 10 if you have got 10 similar vehicles. So meaning that the materials that go into a service job are the same as the materials that go into a manufactured product, because we have got a recipe for each of those, whether it's a service or it's a manufacturing job. So the bill of materials shows the hierarchical relationship between the products. In our case, the end product is called A. So to make one of A, we need two sub-assemblies. The first one is B, and the second one is C. So we need 2 of B and 1 of C. So when we talk of sub-assemblies, I want you to think in terms of, say for example, a car. When you look at a car, it has got major assemblies like the engine. You can take out the engine as a whole from the vehicle, and it is a sub-assembly. But when you look at that engine, it is made of hundreds of different parts. Those parts are put together outside before you even bring the engine to the car. And that same engine can actually be used as an engine for different types of cars. So we call the engine a sub-assembly. It is a finished item on its own, but it still needs to be joined to other sub-assemblies in order to make the full product. So any items that are in between the top item and the bottom items, we call these items in between sub-assemblies. In our case, we only have one level of sub-assemblies. So if you take the sub-assembly B, it is made up of components D and E. So all the bottom level or bottom of the product structure items, these are the components or raw materials. So we need 1 of D and 3 of E to make 1 of B. So you need to be very careful with this illustration. The quantity that you are seeing is for making 1 of the parent item. So this 2 is to make 1 of A. This 3 of E is to make 1 of B. So which means that for us to have 2 of B, we need 6 of E, because the product structure only gives us the quantities for making 1 of each parent. So the table that I'm going to show you later on will demonstrate how to translate this bill of quantities into an Excel spreadsheet that can calculate the total requirements if you just plug in the number of finished products that you want. So we have seen how the bill of materials gives us the recipe for making a particular product. The bill of materials is the link between your store systems and the production or maintenance systems. It helps us to calculate the cost of the production job or the maintenance work, because for a production or a maintenance job cut, there is a material component. So that material component is derived through the bill of quantities. So if we place an order in the factory and we say we want to make 20 of this product, the bill of materials will now tell us how many of each raw material is required to make 20 of that finished product. So at the end of the day, we are able to come up with the total cost of our finished job. When you manage stock in a production environment, there's a lot more pressure on you, especially from the production crew, because you are the person that ensures that all the raw materials that are required for the manufacturing runs, they are available on time. So it means that you should have the kind of system that tells you exactly the materials that are needed for every job as it comes into the factory. Some jobs are very complicated with hundreds of items on them, so you cannot manage such a system manually. You need a computerized system with bill of quantities, so that the moment an order comes in, your system already tells you you need so much of these materials. However, when a job comes into the factory, that is not the actual time to start ordering materials, meaning that your job is a bit more complex, because you have to forecast well in advance demand before it actually occurs. So as a store controller or a stores manager, you need to have those skills of looking at history information, history data, and predicting what the demands might be for different types of materials. It also requires you to work or interface with the people in marketing as well as in production planning. The people in marketing can give you information as to the different types of products that they are selling more. In other words, they can tell you that customers are expressing interest in this line of product. So this coming Christmas season, we might have a lot of orders for a particular product. So in which case you now need to prepare in advance materials that will be required for those products to be made once the orders have been placed. You can see that when you work in a production environment, it is very different from somebody who is working in an office environment where all they are buying is stationery and office supplies. Within an office environment, you are not under that much pressure because you are working with your colleagues. Whereas in a production environment, there is a lot of pressure because there are outsiders involved. There are customers that are involved who want their things on time. There are suppliers who have got their own terms of supply. They've got their own lead time. So you cannot push them and tell them I need materials tomorrow when their delivery time is 5 days. So it becomes very complicated when you start working in an environment where demand for the finished product cannot be predicted 100%. So that is why one of our first modules said the level of sophistication of a store's system depends on the scale of the operation. It also depends on the scope of the operation. How many different things is your organization involved in, and how large are those different operations? So as we continue to the next module, we are now going to look at how we use bill of quantities to calculate the cost of specific products that are being made in the factory. We'll see you in the next module.